Hello and welcome to the only show where this intro joke is 1/4 portion as funny as the rest. I'm Matt.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Max.
And this is Force for Thought. All right, hello and welcome back to Force for Thought, everybody. Happy New Year. This is like the third episode I think that this is going to be released this new year.
But it's the first one we're recording in the new year.
Exactly.
So it's important to us.
Yes, and today we'll be talking about Rebel Moon, A Child of Fire. That is indeed the right title. Like, every time I read it, it doesn't seem correct, but it is. But first, we're going to shoot the ship, and I'm going to let Maxwell take over.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of encourage our followers to reach out to us and follow us on social media. We don't post big announcements very often, but it's exciting when we do. And if you do follow us on Instagram, you will recently see that we made an announcement regarding our very own Matthew. He's going to be a father for the first time.
Yes, indeed. I'm very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank
Shout out
you.
to Matthew. It's very exciting. What we didn't say on Instagram is that Luke and his wife are also expecting their second child.
No, are you really?
Uh-huh.
You
My wife
saved
is
this?
pregnant. Will be due in August.
Why? I've been hanging out with you for hours now. You didn't tell me?
Nope. We wanted to save it for the pod.
Oh my
I got
God.
my wife's permission.
She was here too, hanging out. Oh,
She was. Mm-hmm.
oh, I knew something was going to be up. My God. Man, I'm so happy for
We're
you.
very excited.
Congrats.
We're going to have kids at the same time.
We are. Oh, we're best friends. I assume you don't know what you're having or anything. See, that was thrown off, Luke.
We do not. No.
Are you going to find out? When
Yeah.
is how far
We're
along
8
is
weeks
she?
along.
8. That's it? Oh man.
No. Yeah, around 8 weeks. I don't
So
know.
you just had your
she's
doctor's
doing
appointment?
August. I don't know. Do the math.
Did you see what I mean? This is
Are
why
you trying
we
to think
should.
of when this episode comes out? Like, it was like 10
Oh,
weeks
geez,
back.
I didn't even think about when this episode comes out. No. All right, she's doing August. That's all. That's all the information you're
Are you
getting.
going to announce this to everybody else though too? So before we.
What do you mean everybody else?
Before this episode comes out, like, are you going to
Well,
tell?
Max already knew.
I did already know. And that's because the other thing that we didn't say, which is that me and my wife are expecting our third child
No.
this year as well.
Are you really? Are you really?
Yeah.
Congratulations,
How is
Max.
that? Is that why Lauren wants
Snaps for
Yeah.
Max.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hug you guys. I can't not do this. I don't care it's the podcast. Oh, congrats, guys! What the? Thank you. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, Maxwell.
We're all having babies.
Oh my God. That's insane. Okay.
A lot of Force for Thought babies coming in 2024.
man.
Our audience is going to double.
When's Lauren due?
From us to our 3 kids.
So when's Lauren due then?
Around the exact same time as Hannah, around August.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is insane. Oh, we're gonna all have very newborn babies. Mm-hmm. Who's gonna take over the podcast when we're busy?
Dude, I know.
Oh my God! Wow, amazing! Shoot the ship. Thank God you took that over. I would have bombed this section.
I wanted to include it in Shoot the Ship, and so as soon as you started saying all that, I was like, yeah, we'll think of something to say. I don't know. That's the whole purpose of this segment. It's not really structured, you know. We'll just
man.
shoot the ship a little bit.
My heart is very full. This is insane. Man, I'm gonna be so thrown off. This episode.
2024 is coming up big for Force for Thought.
Yeah, apparently, man, that's huge.
This is the first episode we're recording of the night too, so Matt has like 2.5 hours of podcast recording ahead of him, and the entire time he's gonna be like, I have so much other stuff to talk about now.
I do. I know. This is insane. How long are you guys trying for?
Ever since you announced, we were like, oh, that sounds like a blast. Got to get in on that action.
Can't let him be the only one.
As you guys were just like,
Yeah.
yeah, we've done this once now, and so yeah.
Matt made a joke as soon as he said that he was pregnant. He was like, yeah, so now all those haters on online are going to know for a fact that I've had sex.
That's true. I was gonna
and
make
Luke
that
and I
joke.
were like, it's actually a really good point. We should. Even though we already have kids, we should jump on that as well.
Yeah, there's one of the first comments for one of the first videos we were posted. Somebody said, "Tell me you're a virgin without telling me you're a virgin." And I was like, A, that joke is very old, saying that like format, so fuck you. And B, whatever. I don't
Which
hold
video did they say that
grudges.
on? Which one was that?
It was the one when I think you said like rank the ships, or Luke did. It was
Oh,
like,
one of
it was
the-
like when we
one
were
of those
first
really
testing
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
out.
One of our social media posts.
Yes.
I remember that.
Literally one of the first like episodes, I think, or one of the. It was in the first couple episodes. I think we were just like, how do we do this thing? And then you guys obviously blew up on social media, and I still don't take part in it.
Yeah, we have a very popular video on social media of Matt and I at Taylor Swift concert.
Yes.
And Matt gets very defensive about it because everyone's like
do.
hating on us for watching a movie there, and Matt's like, it's a joke. We're actually really big fans. But
It
I
was
just
a blast.
sent Matt a video on Instagram of that video. Another person, another Instagram account stole that video and reposted it again.
Yeah, that was treacherous.
The worst part, though, is that they keep getting smaller because clearly, like, the person cropped our information out and then stole it. And then that person stole the other person's and cropped it smaller. So it's getting smaller and smaller.
Treacherous.
To start going in every comment section.
Get it?
Treacherous.
The Taylor Swift song.
Yeah. Good look. Good.
All the actual Swifties we have home. Not you guys that just watched Star Wars at the concert. I went to the concert and I watched it.
Yeah, it was a great concert. And Luke's going again as well.
I saw the movie as well.
I did not see the movie, but I'm going again in November. Super excited. There was another topic I wanted to talk about when we're shooting the ship. It kind of pales in comparison to all of the birth we're going to be
I feel like we should just stop the I don't know, guys. I'm really I'm just like, my best friend's going to have his third child, who I'm so excited about, and the 2 kids are adorable, and Luke Taylor, I love you to death, and you're going to have your second.
Mm-hmm.
I hate you guys for saving this. we literally, all 3 of us and our wives and the children were hanging out upstairs like an hour ago. And
I know. I wanted to say it so many times. Yeah, it was awful.
I feel like such an asshole to sit up there not doing that.
But anyway, at Christmas this past week, because this is the first time we're recording over the new year, at my wife's family, I was talking to one of her cousin's kids who is 5, who I've never really talked to before. I'm not really close with her cousin. They're not big Star Wars fans, and they do like sports, and I'm not a big sports fan, so it's only ever been like polite small talk. But out of nowhere, their 5-year-old all of a sudden loves Star Wars. So he and I were talking about Star Wars, but he doesn't know anything about it. He just likes it, and his parents have never seen any of it.
What?
And so he was,
sorry, you should watch Star Wars. You know, if you haven't seen it, you can watch it.
But he was telling me that he likes Cal, and I said, Cal, like Cal Kestis? And he just shrugged his shoulders and he was like, I don't know. And I said, are you thinking of Kai, the young Jedi from Young Jedi Adventures? And he said, no, Cal. And then I asked his mom, I was like, do you know who he's talking about? And she said, yeah, he was watching Star Wars at my parents' house. He likes Cal. I said, like, Cal Kestis is a video game character. Are you sure it was that? And she was like, yeah, there were subtitles. It was C-A-L. And there was also Bravo and Seer. And I was like, he was watching a video. He was watching Jedi Survivor. What do you mean he was just watching Star Wars? And she was like, I don't know. He was watching Star Wars. And so
that's insane.
Now we're big Star Wars fans together. And I had some Bad Batch toys in my car. So I went and got them and gave them to him. And then we were playing Bad Batch. And he doesn't know anything about Star Wars. And I was like, these characters are all, well, I didn't want to say clones because that's a complicated topic. And I said, they're all brothers. And he said, oh, I have brothers. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like that. And he said, do they have any other brothers? And I said, oh, yeah, they have lots of other brothers.
Quite a few.
And then
you said,
a million more on the way.
And you're like, here's my favorite, Clone 99. Let me introduce
This
you.
one's a cripple.
one of the adults was like, oh, they all look the exact same. And I said, well, yeah, they're clones. And they said, oh, so why aren't they the exact same? And I said, well, these are a bad batch of clones. And they said, oh, so they're bad guys? And I said, no, they're good guys.
Including this one, they point to Crosshair, and you're like, okay, all right,
That was
just back
about-
up.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. Because the set of Bad Batch toys sucks. It was Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, and Crosshair in his Imperial armor. And no tech. And so that's lame for a set of Bad Batch toys, for one. But then, yeah, I also had to explain all of that, and he knows literally nothing. He has a dark side sticker book, and that's it. He thought that it's the dark side and the good side. And I had to tell him, no, it's actually the dark side and the light side. And I wanted to give him another toy because we were having so much fun. But the only other toy in my car was what I think is quite literally the least fun toy I could have possibly given him. So I didn't. But what do you... As a thought experiment, what do you think would be the worst toy you could give a 5-year-old that knows nothing about Star Wars if you're giving him a Star Wars toy?
I said, I was joking. I don't think they make a Clone 99 action figure, but that'd be pretty high up there as one of the worst.
Maybe like a generic Gungan warrior.
No, that'd be cool because they look neat. No, it was a Grand Moff Tarkin toy.
Yeah, that is
old human bad guy comes with a torture droid.
Yeah. Oh, you can just smell the old on him.
So I did not share that toy with him, but it was a blast. We talked a lot about Kit Fisto. When he asked to learn about another Star Wars character, we learned a lot about Nadar Veb, Kit Fisto's Padawan.
That's hilarious.
If I play my cards right, I will be breeding the second biggest Kit Fisto fan.
Don't say that. Don't. Don't go cult like with it.
That's so interesting though, and that's something that we've talked about before on the podcast, and that I feel like Matt talks about the most of the three of us, which is like jumping on points and where people learn to love Star Wars.
Yeah.
This kid's experience, I need to check in on him in 10 years if he like continues to follow up with this, because his jumping on point is presumably like watching the cutscenes of Jedi Survivor on YouTube.
He's gonna love Star Wars if he loves that.
Yeah, his parents were asking me because they have not seen any Star Wars,
And
they
he
were
wasn't
like,
playing the game.
"No, he was watching, cutscenes of Jedi Survivor." I don't know. His grandma quote put on Star Wars. That's all the information I have.
With the grandma? How did the
You
grandma?
should have given Grandma your phone and be like, Grandma, put on Star Wars. I need
What
to
does
see
that
this."
mean to you?
Yeah.
But
so many
his parents
questions.
asked me like what they should start showing him, and I was like, "Oh well, it's all like mostly aimed at kids." And they said, "Well, we started watching like The Mandalorian when Baby Yoda was such a big deal, and I thought that was kind of adult." And I was like, "Yeah, that's aimed at an older audience. It's like the kids that were around in the 70s and 80s are now 40-year-olds, and it was kind of made for them." And they said, "Oh, okay, so like some of the cartoons." And I was like, "Yeah." And I was holding the Bad Batch toys, and I was like, "But not this one."
And maybe not so much the later seasons of Rebels.
Right.
And also
Or
maybe
the later
don't-
seasons of Clone Wars.
And maybe don't start with
It's actually-
the prequels.
It's actually not a good idea to just go for cartoons, because odds are you're going to miss.
That's true.
If you're going for just
Which
age appropriate to a 5-year-old.
is
So I told
why-
her just the original trilogy is a good starting point.
I agree full-heartedly, which we should do an episode about that because I have a lot of thoughts and I don't want to go into it, but that's a great, exactly.
it's
so
safe.
weird. That
If
is-
nothing else, it's safe.
But so
Yes.
is the prequel trilogy, though, and I feel like for a 5-year-old especially, like you're telling this 5-year-old to sit down to watch A New Hope, they're not gonna.
No,
I know, that's
magically
what I
gonna
thought.
be
Phantom
there.
Menace.
We have a 5-year-old nephew, and he loves the original trilogy. And I was like kind of blown away when he told me that.
It works
but
for a reason, you know. I can't get into it. I don't want to get into it.
we're not talking about Rebel Moon anymore.
Honestly, I can't believe we're talking about Rebel. It's a little bit, not to bury the lead, but not bury the lead, but like I can't believe we're announcing we're all having children on a Rebel Moon episode. Like that's gonna piss me off to no end. Like
You're
when
gonna want to relive this moment for years. You'd be like, oh, gotta listen to them talk about
Yes.
Zack Snyder.
When we're like our children or like teenagers are like, oh, let's listen to that episode and they all talk about having kids and they're like, maybe not though. Maybe we'll just listen to the first 15 minutes because there was going to be some rants involved. Anyway, well, I don't think we can top anything with that with the shoot the ship. I think that was a very fine segment.
That ship has been shot.
You want to go into Star Wars in the news?
yeah,
Hit us with it.
Oh, I got nothing, Max. You wrote stuff down.
I didn't write that down. I thought you did.
I might have wrote it down, but I thought you were going to present it as the host. I'm sorry. I don't
no.
remember what
okay.
what was it that I wrote. Can
Please
you read
run
it to
with
me?
it. You said Bad Batch Season 3 and Tales of the Jedi Season 2 confirmed. For
Oh, that's
2024.
right.
Yes, because when we record, sorry, I'm stealing this now. Because when we recorded last, when we were talking about the news, that was one of the things that we talked about. Was specifically that there was an article talking about all the shows confirmed for 2024, and those were absent from it.
Yes.
and so we talked
Yep.
about it. And then before that episode even aired, news dropped that and these shows are confirmed now as well. And I was
Which,
like, dang it.
once again, just to confirm, we are not journalists breaking news. We are just talking about the
Correct.
news.
Just reacting, just
Star
giving our
Wars,
thoughts.
yeah.
And
exactly.
my thoughts, pro. I like these shows.
Yeah,
I'm glad that they're coming back. I wasn't really worried that they weren't going to. I thought it was kind of obvious that article that was talking about like the shows that are coming, The Acolyte and the Skeleton Crew, that was like talking about live action shows and other highbrow shows of other properties. And so I'm not surprised that they left off the animation, and I'm not surprised that the animation is coming, but it's good to know for sure.
Do they know a release date on those?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's 2024. But I mean, I'll take that. It's gonna be sad to see Bad
Something's
Batch
got to be
end.
pretty soon.
I would imagine it is weird that the lapse, but I also do feel like they are doing like a rebuilding time of obviously we're talking about different movies and stuff, and this is not necessarily news, but the director of the Rey movie had someone asked her about it today, or maybe it was a couple days ago, and she was like, "Oh, we're gonna create something special." People are like freaking out with that headline. Have you saw that? It's like she says that basically that's it, and then people are like making all these. The people are like prepare for something special. It's like, oh no, that's literally just the quote, just rearranged. I don't know why I brought that up. Honestly.
Oh, I thought that was the other news
something
segment
being
that
soon.
you wanted to talk about for Star Wars in the news.
No, I wrote it down just because I also just think that like having this is the first female director of a Star Wars movie, which I think is a huge deal. Again, specifically with movie I know Bryce Dallas Howard has directed, and I forget her name from Kenobi, but obviously this is the first feature length film directed by a woman, which is obviously it's a huge win. And
Something Chow. Catherine Chow?
No, you're thinking of Deborah Chow.
Deborah
Sure,
Chow.
sure.
That's who Matt was thinking of.
Yeah, that's who did Kenobi.
That's who did Kenobi.
Oh, did Kenobi?
Yeah,
Yes, sorry.
yes.
I thought you were talking about Charmino Boyd Chinoy, who's doing
The Ray movie.
the Ray movie.
No, yeah, she is doing the Ray movie, and the first female director to do a live action, feature length, which is really cool. I don't know, I just saw that in the news, and I think that's really cool. And we were talking about how sexist I think the original trilogy can be, or the holiday special more recently, and so
Yeah, and the original trilogy and the prequels. at
and
times.
yeah, Star Wars, anything with George Lucas's name attached to it, it really just seems to be. Anyway, that's Star Wars in the news. Shall we move on to the topic of the day?
Yeah, what we've already teased it a little, but we're talking about Rebel Moon.
Yes, I said
Would
it
you care to
once.
tell us why?
Would you? Can you guess the subheader of this movie? Even though I've already said it. No, exactly.
Child of Fire?
Yes.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Part
it sound
one.
wrong? You know what part 2 is called? On the top of your sack?
Star Giver.
Yes.
The Star Giver.
The Star Giver, because they said it in the movie. Anyway, today we're talking about Rebel Moon, a Child of Fire. Like Luke said, why are we talking about this? I've heard conflicting things back and forth, but this is originally conceived as a Star Wars property by Zack Snyder. I have seen it being said that it was pitched to Disney when they acquired Star Wars in 2012. But then I also saw that he was pitching it originally to Lucasfilm, and then once Disney acquired it, it was dead in the water. So I've seen both ways. I don't know. I don't know the correct one. I think I've seen it more that was pitched to Disney, and then it just kind of dissolved. But Zack Snyder thought the idea was so good that he turned it into a not Star Wars idea. Again, I think it was just the seed of it, the idea, then he really expanded it, obviously, to make it its own, and it is its own thing. So that's why we're talking about it today. I kind of want to talk about the movie in general, give a review, give a synopsis. I have a lot of overarching thoughts of what this movie kind of represents. I don't know if you guys looked at my notes at all. I was hoping you didn't.
I saw that you had a lot, but I did not read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't be bothered to read all that when I'm going to be
good, I
subjected to
figured.
listening to it now.
Okay. And then the other reason would just be what are the implications, or what would it be like if Rebel Moon was indeed actually a Star Wars property? Again, this is kind of a bit of a mix, because it's not originally Luke was didn't want to do the idea because it's not fully Star Wars. But I think the implications of if it was a Star Wars movie or show, what it would the implications would be so different. Sorry, Luke, you really wanting to talk?
No, I just wanted to talk about that because there's the three of us doing this podcast and we have disagreements sometimes, and I did not want to do this as an episode because like Zack Snyder wanted this to be a Star Wars movie and it isn't. So what? I didn't see the connection. Max and Matt outvoted me. They both wanted to do this, so I thought, okay. I subscribed to Netflix. I watched the movie, and I went in with a good attitude because I wanted to be supportive as a group member. But then the movie sucks.
It's
So now
bad.
I'm kind of pissed that we're doing this because
Yes.
I didn't want to do it, and now it's awful. And I don't see why we're here.
Well,
It's
I'm
not that it's
so
bad. It is just that it is 1/3 to maybe a fourth of a 10-hour movie. And there's just no resolution.
it's-
Like there's nothing.
It's bad.
There.
And I'll get into why, but I don't want to be negative. So let me just go through this a little. Let me just set up a little bit more. So to give
For the record,
yes.
we do try to be positive, but we aren't talking about Star Wars.
We
right
are
now,
not
so I
trying
guess
to- yes.
the door's open. I
And
guess if we want to be negative,
I will be positive on a couple things, but if you saw my list, there's 3 points that are positives and the rest are negatives, and there's a lot. And I don't want to just bash this movie. So necessarily, and before people want to turn this off, because there's a lot of Snyder bros and stuff and blah, blah, blah. But I think I have a theory of why. So I'm just going to go on a bit of, not of a rant, but here's just a quick synopsis. So the synopsis of Rebel Moon is: when a colony on the edge of the galaxy finds itself threatened by armies of the tyrannical Regent Belarus, they dispatch a young woman with a mysterious past to seek out warriors from neighboring planets to help them take a stand. This is also Zack Snyder's second film, directed under the Netflix banner, after his deal with leaving Warner Brothers, obviously after the DCEU. This comes after Army of the Dead, which he also produced. It's Army of the Dead, right? Army of Thieves is the second one we talked about, bank robbing. Also very good. He produced that one. Rebel Moon also currently holds a 5.7 IMDb and a 23% from critics and a 61% from fans on Rotten Tomatoes.
Woof.
The director's cut is coming in 2024 along with a sequel, which is the part 2 called Rebel Moon, part 2, The Star Giver.
I did not know that. There's a director's cut. This is a straight
they
to Netflix
announced it.
movie. Why?
Yep.
They
Why
announced
can't
it
they put a
beforehand.
director's cut straight out first?
And I have a theory about that. I'll get to it. Again, I don't want to hijack the full episode, and I won't. Don't worry. But I have a theory because I figured this is going to go in this way. So I just have a little rant up ahead. So Again, I wrote this out, so I'll ref a little bit. But let me start by saying that I love movies. They're supposed to be fun and entertaining as much as they are supposed to be heartfelt and deep. This movie goes against that in every single way. Again, I don't want to be ultra negative. But usually when you go to a movie, you want to have the audience, treat the audience like they're smart. Even kids' movies, right, can shock you and make you go on this journey. But this movie does something to me that's like absolutely egregious. And that is that it's trying to make you think that this is the next Star Wars or the next big idea, that you need to buy into this amazing property even before you see it. They're so full of themselves, they disregard most of the rules of filmmaking. People say that once you know the rules, you can break them. Quentin Tarantino is is a great example of that. Sorry, am I losing you guys? Is a great example of that, right? He has 9-minute scenes, a fluid structure that doesn't fit in the traditional confines, and that's all fine because it works, right? He works within the parameters of movie-making rules and structure that leads to emotion and character development, where this movie does absolutely none of that, because it puts the cart before the horse. Again, why is there going to be a sequel already? I know it was pitched as a bigger movie, but still, they're putting the cart before the horse in the fact that they think that this is already going to be the best thing you've ever seen. This is going to be amazing. Why is there talks of other spin-offs being made from this movie before it even came out? No one knows how the reaction, the audience's reaction, right? You have to trust the filmmakers to put something good together and have them prove it to the studios and, more importantly, to the audience. I was trying to think of this movie and how it fits within the zeitgeist, and ultimately, I think Netflix just wants to own its own Star Wars and to loop in Snyder Cut bros who can hop on a bandwagon and get this thing going. I don't think it's made for any other reason than that, honestly. I think people were like, oh, Zack Snyder has a Star Wars idea? People want the Snyder Cut. So they're literally giving them the Snyder Cut when nobody asked for it. Why is there a director's cut coming out months later, right? It makes no sense, besides all of this is clearly planned up to be like, the Snyder Cut was a big hashtag, right? It got traction for years. The Snyder Cut came out, and it was better than the original version. But like you said, Luke, why?
Barely, in my opinion.
Yes, I know it wasn't right. He went from like a 5 to a 7, maybe a 5 to a 6.5. Like I'm not gonna rewatch it. It was very fine. It was average, right? But that's the thing. With the same thing with Rebel Moon, they're doing a DCEU thing here, and I think it might be a Snyder thing, just for the fact. And he's not a bad director. With that being said, some of the directing choices I think in this movie are fucking crazy. But like, why are they going this quick? I feel like they think they have an ace in their hand, and they don't, and they are just like showing it, right? They're like, oh, we have a second movie coming out, you're gonna love it, it's coming out in April. That's like, okay, I could have waited 3 more years, I wouldn't care. They have talks of spin-off series, they have a director's cut. It's like they're gonna load Netflix with like 4 movies or 4 IPs from Rebel Moon, and nobody cares. And I wonder if any of that's gonna change. There's a great quote from Variety in this in the review of it, which I'll read real quick, and then I swear that we can be an open discussion. We'll go through positives and presumably negatives. Forget who. Oh, sorry, not Variety. Vulture. And the writer wrote, crumbling under the weight of its own visionary grandiose, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon is a series of amazing-looking sets and costumes, and effects looking for a story, characters, emotion, really anything that might raise a pulse. And that's the best way I can feel about it too. It's all fluff. It's no substance. I don't want to. I know I'm not gonna get too negative about it, but there I go, I guess. And we're gonna dive into some positives, but yeah, I want to overall see what you guys think. That's kind of my synopsis. When I watched the movie, I was like, man, this movie is not very good. But then when I thought about it and the implications it had into Star Wars and the implications it have into cinema more, in general, and why they're spending so much money across this very average IP, it really irked me, which is why I wrote that little intro. So what'd you guys think about it? Overall top view thoughts. And then we can get into positives and negatives.
I did not like it. I did not know any of this stuff, like behind the scenes highbrow, before I watched it. I don't think I'd even heard of it before you said that we wanted to do this as an episode.
Yeah.
And then I didn't bother watching a trailer or looking up anything because I knew I was going to watch it for this. So I was pretty lost with like the structure of it, because it was like they teased a magic system. Because at first I knew it was like Star Wars-esque, and it opens with basically a crawl, and there's an empire, and it's space, and it's pretty similar to Star Wars in terms of the stage of the galaxy. Mm-hmm. And they like tease a magic system in the very beginning, and that's what I like so much about Star Wars is the magic system. And then they don't really go back into it, and then I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's more like Star Trek, which is fine. I would rather a magic system, but then in like the last 5 minutes, they're like, oh, there's another plane of existence, and this guy comes back to life, and there's all kinds of magic. And I was like, what the hell is happening? And then it's over, and it's like part 2 in a couple months. So I was like, what? Why? Why? Just why to all of this?
I agree. And that's the thing Max, please go on. I've been talking for a long time.
No, I mean I don't necessarily disagree with what you guys are saying, but I just kind of have like a slightly more positive outlook on it because it's
Really?
like I liked the idea of it more than I actually liked the movie, but the idea is just Star Wars.
Exactly.
So obviously it's easy for me to say that, but like it looked beautiful. Like I really liked looking at everything. It was cool.
Yeah, the visuals were nice. The magma, there were like when the blasters went pew pew, and there would be like magma or whatever
Yeah.
molten metal that would come out of it. That was neat.
Yeah, the action was really cool, and it does a lot of things that kind of annoy me because Zack Snyder kind of annoys me, and this movie is just super Zack Snyder-y. Like it's like all the action is very slow mo. Like Matt said, like everything, the fact that they're doing like a part 1 like right off the bat, and they're already announcing a director's cut, which makes sense because like every single time I'm watching this, I'm like, wow, that must have been like super gruesome. And I was like, oh yeah, there's an R-rated director's cut. Like, I feel like this is the actual director's cut. They just like cut away from the deaths a split second sooner, so you don't see all the gore that like would naturally
They
come with
kill
the
the
way these people are dying.
main
basically.
villain off, and they don't show him die. 2 seconds.
Well, it's because he doesn't die. He comes back in 2 seconds.
No, sorry.
Spoiler alert.
Charlie
Spoiler.
Charlie Hunnam. Sorry.
I was
The-
wondering if he
Oh,
died.
oh.
I didn't even remember what happened to him.
Who?
He does
Charlie
die?
Hunnam?
Yeah.
The guy, which is a cool moment, the guy from Game of Thrones.
They kicked him off the ledge, didn't they?
No, he goes to paralyze the main character. $1 million to name all of these characters' names. $1 million. And then he takes it out and shoots Charlie Hunnam, which is an
Kira was the
amazing
main
moment.
character.
Is it
Oh, he shot Charlie Hunnam at
with
the end?
with the paralyzer. But then
So is he just
they
paralyzed?
cut away. Well, he shoots him in his like under his chin, so presumably goes into his brain. I would
They were
assume.
about to paralyze Kira in the back of the head.
Great point. Don't know.
I imagine he'll be in the second one.
Is that a paralyzer? I thought that was an executioner. I thought people died when they went in that thing.
I thought so too. But he says paralyze them, so no one gets antsy on the
No, I didn't catch that.
and it's
Yeah,
like.
I think he's just paralyzed. I think he'll be in the next part.
But again, the rules don't make.
interesting.
But then why not show it? I'm getting ahead too. But the thing that irked me was just like when they go get the guy who rides the bird from Harry Potter.
I had no idea what was going on with that sequence.
Neither
I
do
felt
I.
like I looked away for a second and
Yeah.
something completely different. Like I turned
That's
on.
how it was when they went to get every character, though.
Yes.
Like the entire movie is just okay. We got to assemble this ragtag team, so they're just going from planet to planet, picking up these people.
Yep.
And on every planet, when they pick up this person, they just get into a different circumstance every time.
Exactly.
And each time, you just kind of get thrown into the middle of it, and you're like, I have no idea what's happening
Yes.
right now. Like when they picked up
The spider lady.
Yeah, I was about to say
Yeah.
the spider lady. That would like that sequence was cool.
But, like-
I liked it, but yeah, it was like 2 minutes of me just being like, wait, what's happening right now?
But I was gonna say when he picks up the guy who's in slavery, who's enslaved to the guy who owns him, right? The Watto of the of the group. They don't show him for 3 minutes in a close up. You have no idea who's talking. They are talking from I don't know, like 15, 20 feet away together, and they're like exchanging dialogue, and then they go into the tent and see the guy shackled up who's working, and then the people who are gonna
Oh,
go
the guy
save
who
him,
was flying on the
yeah, those two people talk, but the guy who like owns him, the bad guy in that situation, is not seen for 3 minutes. That's insane. You have no idea who's talking at all. You have no idea who the antagonist is within this scene.
That's interesting. I don't remember anything about that scene bothering me. The thing that bothered me was they made a big deal about the former war general who's basically a gladiator now, and apparently someone else tried to recruit him before and it didn't work because he's a gladiator and like they died or whatever.
Yeah.
And this time they go there and there was really no conflict at all. Like I don't know how they got him out of there. Actually, now that I'm thinking
He was just a
about it.
drunk sitting there, and they washed him off, and they're like, "Join us." And, all right.
Was he not enslaved though? I thought he was there like against his own will.
I don't
He
know.
just left voluntarily and that was okay.
That's Max. There's some.
That was the one that I had a big question about. But
Oh,
like the
yeah.
whole thing, so the whole thing with the movie for me, right? It's hard for me to like even give this movie a rating because it's literally like if you just showed somebody A New Hope but then turned it off right after the cantina scene.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what do you think? And it's like, I don't know, man. That wasn't the whole movie.
But even I texted you this right after. I was like, it felt like Zack Snyder was like, in the deleted scenes from A New Hope when Luke's like messing around with his binoculars, looking in the sky. I felt like Zack Snyder like that cut better. Like it was all the
Yeah.
boring shit. Like the big. I want to go into positives, I guess, because I have a lot of negatives. But let me just dive into the negative of structure here. I'm a big fan of structure. It doesn't sound fun, but I think working within confines of structure are a blast. 3x structure, 4x structure, 5x structure is great. The most basic structure I've ever seen was in this movie. In the first act, the farm, we are introduced to this farming town, but not really introduced. You can't tell the scenery whatsoever. It's always in the background. It's never in the foreground. The thing that irks me too was when in the first couple scenes, in the volume in Mandalorian, how every scene they are able to move everything around it to make it the most perfect shot. It feels like they do the opposite of this. It's just like, here's this guy in this black crop field with this amazing scenery that's like in 5% of the screen. And the rest of it, I'm just like, what are they showing right now? Like, why are they showing? They're shooting like down, so you see her, but she's like in the background. It's just these dead crops. Makes no sense. So we see this farming town that we never really get able to sink our teeth into. We're setting up some of these characters in the first act, like the farm girl, who is never mentioned again until the very end. The second act is getting the band back together, but the downside is that everybody has just heard of somebody that they can kind of get, so there's no interpersonal relationships or building. And then my acts, like what you said, they're just thrust into scenarios, and then after those scenarios, those characters don't interact at all. It's like if Drax turned bad in Guardians of the Galaxy, that'd be a huge shocker. That'd be a huge moment. And they try to do that with Charlie Hunnam's character in this, and it doesn't pay off because I'm just like, well, yeah, why wouldn't that guy be bad? Who cares? I don't know anything about him. He doesn't have any sort of relationship with any of the other characters. It doesn't matter. And then the third act, it's just these characters go into battle, and that's the only structure in the movie. It's just like set up, gang together, big fight, and that's it. And it's like not interesting at all because it's like, I think it's so basic in the fact that it's like getting the band back together, but like in the Blues Brothers, getting the band back together works because you understand who these characters are and the inner dynamics within these characters, and they don't hinge the full movie on that. It's like, oh, a little section of Act 2 is getting the band back together, and then the band's back together, let's do our thing. But they never do their thing. They don't even know each other. The characters do not interact with one another whatsoever. Does the guy who is dirty and gets washed off ever interact with the lady with the weird hat? I don't know. I don't think they do.
This is probably going to make it sound worse, honestly, but I disagree with how you're even like breaking down the acts.
What?
Because the entire movie just felt like one single act. Because to me, this big story that Zack Snyder's trying to tell is like, to me, a clear 3-act structure. Like, okay, the first act is the call to action, and you're getting the gang together, right? The second act, which is going to be the next movie, is going to be they go on their mission, they're going to try to take down this Regent General or the Empire or whatever it is, and then it's probably going to end with them failing, right? And then they're going to be at their lowest point, and that's going to go into Act 3, where they're going to go on their final mission, and they're finally going to be successful and grow as characters or whatever. And this whole movie is 2.5 hours of just that first act, just getting the band together, and it feels slow, even though a lot of stuff is happening. But that's why it's like hard for me to like in my head visualize the different acts, because I'm like, this movie is just Act 1.
That's interesting because for me, it's like The Village is all Act 1. It's all boring 45-minute setup of just being like, why do we care about these characters? I don't care that the guy dies. I like him because he's a good actor.
I disagree with that strongly. I thought that was the best part of the movie, honestly.
I was going to say the same thing. I really liked the farm parts.
Ultimately,
and I did not like the rest
I
of
do
it.
agree. That is the best part, unfortunately.
What's the bald guy's name?
I can never remember, but he's very good.
Plays Black Jacket or Yellow Jacket and Ant-Man.
He does. House of Cards.
Everything with him.
He's great.
Everything with him was fantastic.
That's
like,
more
I
interesting
that.
part.
And I also disagree about the visuals too, because
Really?
Consistently, I enjoyed at least looking at the entire movie. But
The
especially,
far away shots were great. When you see the other planets and stuff, 1000%.
and that's what I was going to say about the opening planet. Because when you see them like doing the field work, and in the background is like that huge planet like right behind them and everything, I'm like, that's just like visually super cool and interesting to look at. I always liked looking at it. It just kind of the story never clicked. And the whole movie, like I said, it's just the first act with all these different characters. You're just getting the band together at this point, and we have no reason to like any of these characters, like you said. Like there's needs to be some more interaction between the characters, something that sticks out to identify them, to be like, oh yeah, that's this character. Instead, it's just like, oh yeah, that's the character who did this when they picked him up. But like you said, like once you picked them up, their story was done, and they didn't do anything else the rest of the movie.
See, most of the I'm showing Max and Luca still right here. Most of it is just blurred background with a few shots to make you think you're looking at something interesting to me. That's not an interesting shot, I don't think. Neither is this. This is just brown.
But it starts with the big establishing
But
shots,
yes,
though, so you know what you're
exactly.
there.
So it's the trick that you think you're looking at something interesting, but you're not.
But I mean, that's
It successfully
filmmaking,
tricked
though.
me. Yeah.
It did not for me. That was one of the, I was just like, what is anybody? Man, that's crazy to me. I was just like, the visual shots, the big intro visual shots, I think are great. But like, man, I was just like, it was so weird. It's just like, again, blurred shot with brown in background. It's just so weird.
Yeah, you're
I've never seen anything like that.
Then it's
It
just
was-
mood and ambiance.
Star Wars would never do it. Even in the volume, it's like no matter how weird the volume can look, it's like at least they give you something interesting all the time, like to look at. Like when they're in different cities, like they're trying their best, and I feel like I don't know if, and that's not fair to compare it, but it's so weird because it is comparing it because that's what we're doing this episode for.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's start tying it back to Star Wars because I'm still not convinced on why we should do this episode about Rebel Moon.
Yeah, the
That's
reason
true.
I wanted
Well,
to do
it's-
it was
yeah.
because, like Matt said, like it was originally tied to Star Wars, and then there was like a bunch of news articles that came out before this movie dropped about how it was supposed to be a Star Wars movie, and then when Star Wars passed on him, Zack Snyder's, I think it was his wife, said,
Yeah.
F it, we'll do it without Star Wars then. And
Yeah.
the movie just kind of became like a big rallying cry, I think, for a lot of people who really don't like Star Wars anymore, to be kind of like the anti-Star Wars. And I see a lot of those people on YouTube who are kind of rallying behind it, like, oh, Rebel Moon, it's the new Star Wars and it's even better, yada, yada, yada. So I wanted to go into it with an open mind and be
Same.
like, okay, hopefully it is the new Star Wars because I love Star Wars. I wish everything was Star Wars. And then I watched it, and like I said, I'm conflicted on it. Like I didn't hate it. I'm not going to recommend it to anybody until I see the next one, because maybe the next one will start to kind of like continue the plot or give me an actual plot, and it'll kind of help tie everything back together. Like if they just said tomorrow, like, oh, okay, people didn't like it, part 2 is canceled, then I'd be like, oh, okay, it was a bad movie. Like if that's what we have, it's bad. But because they went out of their way to be like, hey, just so you know, this is a part 1. You don't start with a part 1.
No.
Like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
Yes.
Like you watched, what is it, 6 movies up until that point, and then the last one, they're like, oh, just so you know, it's going to be a part 1 and part 2. And it's like, okay, well, we're already invested at that point, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with like Hunger Games, whatever. There's a bunch
Breaking
of
Bad
franchises that
seasons,
do it.
Sopranos, Mad Men.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like you do that at the end. And like you said, like Zack Snyder clearly thinks he has something here. And I'm not convinced that he doesn't. He just hasn't showed us what it is yet. Like he hasn't told me what that
It's
is.
It's same thing with the DCEU. It's the same thing. And to bring it back to Star Wars as well, as the exposition told is just like in Star Wars when we have the crawl, it's interesting, right? They show you exposition because Star Wars is a big universe. You want to see what happens between stories. You want to set the story up. In this movie, we have I was going to say Anthony Daniels, Anthony Hopkins giving a voiceover, but like that's the thing in Star Wars, it craftively shows you information, and then it shows you, it's like, oh, Princess Leia. Who's Princess Leia? Here she is. She's cool. It's like, oh, there's the Empire. Here's the Empire. It shows you everything. In this movie, it just tells you all this exposition and shows you nothing. Like even though the interesting farmland stuff, again, it's like it's so long because in the grand scheme, it has nothing to really do with the story besides. Again, think about this. The core of the movie is they don't want to sell their crops to the Empire-esque characters. And so then they go to somehow other planets to get these characters? Like, that's an insane story. There's nothing at stake besides crops. That's weird to me, right? It's like, oh, what if Luke Skywalker had to defend his moisture? Like, that's the stakes that we're dealing with. But then in
that part I don't mind, though. I don't know. I
Really?
don't mind that it's like a more grounded story, like
Neither do
focusing
I.
on like a small planet in a bigger galaxy.
If it was... I love that aspect
but that's
too.
not what it focuses on.
No, exactly. But then it goes to all these more interesting places and all these people with actually bigger problems. That's the confusing thing. If you were to be like, oh, I have to go get my brother who's like on the other side of the planet. We have to go, get people that are connected to the town. That's interesting. And they're like, oh, that person's on a planet farther away. So there is more interesting ways I think you could tell that story to get people back to the town. Because now you just have random people that people have heard of that they don't even directly know or have ever heard of. To help them defend their crops, which is just weird.
I feel like you keep teasing me with a Star Wars connection.
I was talking about the opening crawl basically and how.
Okay, there was an opening crawl in Rebel Moon,
but except it was just exposition and it led you to nothing. And again, I think it's one of those things where it's just Star Wars tells a story so craftfully and is able to do it so well. Even if George Lucas's original script isn't that great, in the fact that again it was saved in the edit for the original movie, it tells characters in a correct way and it gives you little nuggets of them, and you want to explore them more. It doesn't overstuff anything. I think the way it's perfect that you have R2D2 and C3PO in that original trilogy of the droids. If you had one more droid, it'd be too many. If you had one less, it wouldn't work, right? Like it just. I think those pieces, and that's instinct. I don't think that's something you can teach. And I think Zack Snyder's instinct, and this sounds like I'm dissing Zack Snyder. I love Watchmen. It's one of the best superheroes movies ever made. But I think Zack Snyder's instincts are just wrong sometimes. And I don't think anybody is. I think he's in that phase of George Lucas in the prequel trilogy where no one tells him no. Because I think he's got people around him, whether it's his wife, like you said, his wife has a production company as well, who made this and shopped it around and everything. Which is like, yeah, I would do the same thing if my wife had a production company, and yeah, you know, I mean, go watch Obscura. Yeah. But you know, it's one of those things. I feel like it's, I don't know. It just, someone needs to tell him no, I think, or be a little bit more collaborative as well.
And I think we've talked about this on the show before too. But back in the day, 77. Making movies was just a lot harder, and it required a lot more hands on deck. It was a lot more of a collaborative process. Even though George Lucas wanted to retain as much control as he could, it was still very collaborative. And I feel like collaboration is just what this movie is missing, because it is very Zack Snyder-y. And yeah, like you said, like he didn't surround himself with anyone to say no. Like it's, I think that's the problem. Like Zack Snyder wrote it, directed it, produced it, edited it. Like he did everything, and we got exactly what he had in his head. Yeah. And it's just like not resonating with us. It's like you needed to bounce around a couple ideas with a couple other creatives first. And that's why I'm kind of glad that, not kind of, really glad that this isn't Star Wars, because I don't want Zack Snyder and his style, because he has one and it's very strong, to touch Star Wars. Like, I don't mind Zack Snyder. Like you said, I really like Watchmen. I think that style of movie lends well to his style. But I don't think he should do Star Wars. I think there's a lot of people like that where I'm like, I like them, but I don't want them touching Star Wars, right? Like Quentin Tarantino, you brought up before too. I actually do not like Quentin Tarantino, but even if you do, I feel like you can at least acknowledge like he should not go near Star Wars. Like that's just not something that his style lends well to. I wouldn't want Christopher Nolan doing a Star Wars movie.
I agree. That's the thing, and that's why. Sorry, that's what I was going to bring up earlier. Charmine, who's doing the Rey movie, perfect person, has never directed a feature-length narrative movie before. She is a journalist. She is, you know, she's like an Ivy Leaguer from Stanford. I think Stanford's Ivy League, right? I have a master's degree, and I think that's the perfect person to do it. You need these directors who are relatively unknown, that come from other parts of the world. I don't mean necessarily like actually geographically, but I just mean like what you're doing. Like, you don't need to be a Hollywood insider or the biggest director of all time. You just need to trust people with a distinct and interesting vision. I also want to get into like what it means for Star Wars, but the last thing I'll say about the structures, swear to God, is that there's an adage from Billy Wilder, who wrote Sunset Boulevard, Some Like It Hot, The Apartment, some of the best written movies ever. And it goes that if you have a problem in your third act, you have a problem in your first act. I think that's the biggest problem with this movie, is that it doesn't hinge anything on the first act, and that's the thing that irks me, is just like all these characters. It's just like at the end of it in Star Wars, at the end of Star Wars, you feel something when Obi-Wan Kenobi dies, right? Because like he's got a fun relationship with Han Solo. I think it's a little like tongue-in-cheek with them, right? Luke Skywalker looks up to him. We know Leia is looking for Obi-Wan, so when he dies, it actually hits, right? And we know Darth Vader is like a big scary guy, so it hits. And in Rebel Moon, it's like when Charlie Hunnam turns, it's just like, man, I wish I knew this character and I liked him more. Charlie Hunnam's a really good actor, and I think all the actors and all the characters seem very interesting. I like that they play against tropes too. You know, the guy from Game of Thrones who's like, I'm just a farmer, even though he's like jacked as hell. It's just like, okay, but it's like he doesn't really know how to fight. He saves the girl in that spider scene, but it's like maybe that's development, I guess. And then the only character that has any sort of character development is the robot.
I was about to say, the robot was my favorite
doesn't
part.
even go on the adventure with them.
Yeah.
I was like, they leave him behind. So Luke, this is what I was going to ask you about Star Wars, and I want to ask you about Rebel Moon. There's a lot of weird creatures in this movie.
Yes, I quite liked that.
Yes, so I wanted to hear your opinions on the robot. I want to hear your opinions on the different creatures, and if you think these creatures would work in the Star Wars universe, or if you think they would, how they worked within this movie.
I think any of them would work in the Star Wars universe. Yes. The robot, I was pretty lost on. I mean, he was in like the first, not even the farming act. He was in like the first 15 minutes, and then he shows up again at the end.
But he's got a crown and
he has a crown of antlers. But it's like he's not a character in this movie. Like what is that robot doing on my screen? I was very lost on that. There were a lot of really unique looking aliens. There was that one that like took over someone's body and talked through him. That was really neat. Yeah. A lot of other aliens that I thought were cool. The lightsabers were cool for discount lightsabers. Yeah. I don't know. The lore stuff.
The discount lightsabers.
The creature design I thought was great. Similar to Star Wars, they're all background characters, and I thought they could have done with another one or two of them as the main characters instead of so many regular humans. Yeah. But no preference.
I like
really.
the scuzzy guy who like wanted to have sex with the farmer in the bar. That creepy alien pig guy who ends up bringing back his buddies. Like he was pretty freaky. I thought he was really well
in the cantina scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty 1-to-1 recreation of a cantina
It
scene.
was, and that's just
Did you think they were going to cut off his arm when he came back?
I almost did. There was something that I think within this movie too that was weird. Is that like I think Star Wars works so well visually, and it's just the perfect right. It's like you don't go too far with the costumes that for like Nazi Germany. You don't go too far with it's like everything looks it meshes really well together. Even though you have like this, it's the contrast, the sleek side of the Empire, the really raggedy side of the Rebellion, and for this it was very weird because we obviously Zack Snyder made 300, so there's like this weird Roman Empire-esque the visual style to it, but there's also this very samurai style to it with like the bad guys' armors, who by the way you can't distinguish those people at all. They should just have helmets on the entire time, because when they're like taking that girl in to the shed, I'm like, I don't know who. I thought this guy was already the guy.
Yeah, the stormtroopers looked dumb.
Yeah,
that was a step back.
Yes, and so I think just like another visual thing where it just needs to be. Usually it's like less cooks in the kitchen, but like we need a couple more cooks in this kitchen, honestly, to make any sort of semblance of a meal.
Quinlan Voss was cool, and his tribe, or I don't remember what the Rebel Moon equivalent of his name was, but it was basically just Quinlan Voss.
It was Quinlan Voss, basically. Yeah, good call. Talking about the Star Wars.
I disagree about the aesthetic.
Really?
Of it. I thought it was really cool. Yeah, but that was
to me. It didn't make any. It was each section was cool, but it didn't feel like it was in the same universe or planet. Because I'm just like, it's Roman Empire. It's the samurai, and then also like this weird grittiness. There was like three things. I don't know.
Yeah, I liked all that too. I mean, they're different. They are different planets.
Yeah, that's true.
the visuals. I can't say enough good things about. I think that was by far the best thing in the movie. Like I said, at no point did I look at something and just like not enjoy what I was looking at. I thought the entire thing looked really good. It was just the story itself. Like I said, because you keep coming back to this act structure thing, and I'm like, I really don't think even Zack Snyder wants you looking at it like that.
I don't think so either, but it's just so plainly there. It's just, again, I don't.
It is. It's an unforced error because, like I said, you don't do a part one to kick something off. Like, but like if that's what they're doing, then you have to go into it accepting that and just being like, okay, this is going to be part one. And I thought it was going to be part one of two, but like I said, I feel like it's a part one of three or more.
I don't think so. Did you see the trailer for Stargiver?
Mm-mm.
It's like the final conclusion. They're just fighting in that because they at the end of A Child of Fire, they make it back to that home planet.
Right.
And then the third act is just them preparing and fighting the entire time.
Well, we'll see what the pacing is like.
That's
then when
all.
That's
all
all
they
together,
wanted this movie to be anyway. They don't have any story to tell. They just want to make a lot of cool action sequences, which they did. But that doesn't make a good movie or one that I want to watch again.
Charlie Hunnam Turning Bad is a perfect end of the second act into the third act. And they just don't. They don't do it. They don't go there. Anyway, the last little section before the comment section, I guess, of this is like, again, Max, you already answered this, but Luke, what for you would it mean to this be in the Star Wars universe? Like, if this was made to Star Wars, like, what do you think it would work? Do you think it would not work? I assume we know the answer, but
I mean, it's basically just Star Wars, but looks cooler. So yeah, it could work if they tightened up the story. I don't think that that Zack Snyder wanted it to be a Star Wars movie really warrants us even having this discussion, to be honest. I don't care that Zack Snyder... I want all my movies to be Star Wars movies also. So, like, I just don't see the gravitas of that news article that you guys seem to.
It's one of those things where, like, I think it's the implications of, like, I'm glad that he's trying to do something different that you can sink your teeth into, but that's the thing is, like, I don't think I want everything to be Star Wars. I still want it to be special, It's one of those things that...
And there are countless other directors and writers and movies and series that I'm glad are not Star Wars.
Yeah.
And this does not seem any more special than any of those.
And I think it's one of those things that just be sci-fi. You don't have to be Star Wars. If it's Star Wars is a very specific thing, I think. And then I think the last thing I'll say about what if what I think about would be in if it was in the Star Wars universe and our couple to follow up on a comment that one of our friends made a couple months ago, we mentioned on the podcast, is one of our friends, Travis, who has soured on Star Wars over the years, asked us a few months ago, what would it take for us to say that was something bad in Star Wars? And this would be it. This is what it would take to say this is not very good. Anyway. So, lastly, guys, mostly let's be real, I guess, bashed this movie the entire time. It was a weirdly a fun watch, and it's just nothing. It just again irked me with the implications overall, what it means to like filmmaking or sci-fi, and also what it means again, just the cart before the horse. But it was like a fun watch. I'm looking forward to seeing part 2 to see if it wraps up. And I know this is a part 1 of part 2, so it's kind of hard to give
I
our
am
final
definitely
thoughts.
going to see part 2.
Me too.
Part 1 did not stop me from watching part 2.
I will not be watching part 2, and I will push back a little bit harder when you guys want me to do it for this podcast. Because I'm still not convinced that this is a Star Wars.
It is Star Wars. It is
topic.
literally Star Wars. You watch the movie and you squint and you're like, oh yes, this is Star Wars.
I just feel like I didn't get to talk about Star
Everyone
Wars
in the
much
That's
Star
true.
Wars
That's
community,
true.
minutes.
everyone in the Star Wars community is
But
talking
you know what would be
about it.
interesting though, maybe if you hosted the part 2.
I don't want to watch part 2. I don't want to talk about this series.
All right, looking for part 2, Stargiver, Matt's Rogue One. Just kidding.
Yeah, maybe
So,
this would be more appropriate as a Rogue
last
One.
thing, what would you give it out of 10? I guess last little section.
I don't know, 6.
Okay.
An A.
What? An A.
An A, not
not
available.
applicable.
This is not a full movie.
I
You can't rank it. I don't know. Maybe I'll see part 2 and I'll be like, wow, this was an incredible series. I
Yes.
give it an 8 out of 10.
You can, you shouldn't
but-
say it's a series out of a movie though, even too. But right now, I'd give it a 5. But we have to see where it goes. Fun watch, but would not watch again.
Yeah, if gun to my head, I had to give it a number right now, I'd probably give it a 5 as well.
Anyway, moving to more positive section, we have some comments.
Yes, Lindy reached out to us to gush with me about the High Republic, which was really exciting. I did not convince her to start reading the High Republic, but she also reads it and she's a fan, so that was exciting. She also
Love
asked
it.
about ads and how she gets ads local to her area and whether we're like spying on her and how we did that. Podbean handled all that, but it doesn't matter because we're done with ads. I finally convinced Max and Matt that it is making our podcast worse than the amount of money it's bringing in, which is, as we've said before, fractions
Hundreds.
of pennies.
It was negligible.
With that being said, we are looking for sponsors.
Yeah, I'm happy to monetize in a different way, but boy, did I hate listening to myself talk about Star Wars and then be interrupted by an ad of all
Terribly
things.
placed.
Well, what did it to me was that you were recommending somebody our podcast, and you even said, yeah, I told them to go to YouTube, though, so that they don't have to listen to the ads. And I'm like, well, if we're specifically turning people away from the ads.
I
then-
also did that.
Yeah.
They were awful.
Writing was on the wall. I was
Good
like, all right,
riddance.
all right. It was cool that we were able to do it. We qualified for it. Thank you,
Yes.
listener, for listening to us.
Yeah, seriously,
There's
thank
enough
you.
of you that we were able to monetize it, but not quite enough that we could get anything actually meaningful from
Yes,
it.
but if we get more listeners, then we can read them ourselves, and that would be fun as hell. Because
Yeah.
as anybody knows, who's listened to this, I love making scripts, complicated scripts for us to read. And so does Luke, as of last episode or 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, that's true. Lucian also reached out to represent the younger generation in Star Wars. During our ranking Star Wars episode months ago now, Max said, and Max agreed, that when they talk about Star Wars with friends and family, that's always like A New Hope and Empire and 1 and 2, and it's a toss-up. And Lucian reached out and said that he's younger. I forget how young he is. I think he said he was like 9 when
17, I think, right? Or
The Force
18, something like
Awakens
that.
came out. So he said that whenever he talks about it with his friends, it's always Empire and Revenge of the Sith. And I think that's really interesting that we're just old,
Yeah.
not a touch. And one day it'll be Revenge of the Sith and The Last Jedi, and then
Yeah.
one day it'll be The Last Jedi and whatever the new,
Yeah.
maybe the new Rey movie. Who knows?
We're having 3 babies this year. Those babies are going to grow up, and Empire, Revenge, and The Last Jedi are going to just be all things that just were always there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
He also very passionately defended the CG in the Hobbit movies, which we kind of bashed on, and I still kind of don't agree with him.
I
but-
fully don't agree with it.
I want to give him a voice for the discourse, that there are people out there that like the CG in the Hobbit movies, and
I
it
think
may
this is
not
the one
be
that I
any of
responded
us.
to, right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, and I think I even said something along those lines. I was like, hey, keep up the good fight. Like, if it's meaningful to you and you're passionate about it, don't give up. Even if I disagree, because I
Yep.
do disagree. I don't like The
I don't
Hobbit
think-
nearly as much as Lord of the Rings, but good for you, man.
I think that's the thing too. Is The Hobbit isn't bad if Lord of the Rings didn't exist. The CGI it's fine. It's fine. It's not great, but when you have Lord of the Rings, you can't compare it. It's
I
hard.
kind of thought the CGI was bad.
Well, and whenever I think of the CGI of The Hobbit 2, I always think about the frames per second issue that it also had.
Oh, no,
because
we
that's the
can't,
only
we
way that I
can't
saw
open
it.
this back up.
It doesn't make sense to me, but
It's
and
more
that
of
kinda-
pictures within a second, Maxwell.
but how do our eyes see more than what they already see, Matthew?
How many frames do we register in real life?
Like 24 frames per second, like for example, is like movies, and 25 frames is British TV shows, which is why British TV
But like,
shows
what am
look
I
weird.
looking at right now? Like, what do my eyes and brain
Well, there's
process?
no
What's the maximum.
I don't know. There's no pictures in front of you. That's
But
how
I mean,
you.
that's how we.
But
There's
that's how-
got to
but
be.
Isn't that blowing your mind right
No,
now?
it's
Because
how you-
somehow a movie just put more pictures and your eye was just able to see
Yes,
more?
because in the second,
Why
it
don't I
puts
see that in real
captures-
life?
'cause it just looks like real life. That's
That
we're
is
not
what you see
seeing
in
pictures.
real life. It's more like
No,
what
it
you
looked,
see in real
everything
life.
looked fast. It was like sped up and weird looking.
Yeah.
It's because you were used to watching movies at 24. I actually didn't really notice
Yeah.
the high frame rate that much when I first saw it, and I still I
Yeah,
have to look at
it's-
it, look for it when I,
I
watch
couldn't
it
get
now.
over
Yeah.
it. It was like 3 hours, and I never
Yep.
got used to
You
it.
did.
It gave me a
We
headache.
all saw it together.
I think
yeah.
I felt that was back when midnight premieres were actually at midnight.
Yes.
And I remember because I fell asleep, I think at all three
three
of
of
them, and part of it was because of the frame rate.
It was
because
one
I had
of
to
our-
like close my eyes for seconds at a time and be like, I still can't get used to it.
Yeah, that's why.
I remember we were it was the three of us and also your brother Mike,
Yes.
and I was sitting next to him, and when the logos started going, he like rolled his eyes and was like, "Oh man, I forgot about the high frame rate." And I was like, "You have to be making this up. There's no way
Mike,
this
no.
looks different to you."
Also, Luke, I was trying to be nice about the CGI.
No, I mean we don't have to
Yeah,
like
this-
it just because someone else does. I mean everyone can like and dislike whatever you fancy yourself, and I just wanted to give that guy a voice that
Yeah.
there are people out there that like CG, because if one person said it to us, there are other people listening that also think it. And
That's true.
I don't want them to feel alienated and like
Yeah,
they're wrong.
exactly.
No one's right or wrong. We just all happen to agree, and this guy disagrees. So
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying this guy. It was Lucian, and thanks for reaching out, Lucian. That's all we had for comments, though. Anyone have any force for thought?
I had another comment actually,
I'm
real
sorry.
quick. I remembered it like halfway through as you were talking. It actually comes from our very own Sammy, because in an episode a couple weeks back, we were talking about the voice actor for Callus, and we were talking about live action castings, and we talked about how the voice actor for Callus is actually a black guy, and
Yeah.
how that would be like kind of awkward to be like, oh, hey, we liked you for the voice, but for obvious reasons,
Right.
you're not the right guy for the job. And it was just funny that I think we kind of overlooked like a very big instance of exactly that happening in Star Wars, very famously. Do you know
James
what it
Earl
is?
Jones?
Yeah. And none of us really brought up the fact that that's exactly what happened with Darth Vader. And we were like, oh, yeah, I guess that is true. So he kind of pointed that out. He was like, well, it's the same thing with James Earl Jones and Darth Vader. And I was
Well, it
like,
was the opposite
that's
of that, though.
true. I never thought of that.
They,
No, it's a black voice actor
yeah,
for a white character.
yeah, but it was James Earl Jones did the opposite. He was the guy afterwards. He replaced the OG guy's voice. It wasn't the other way around.
Oh,
you know.
because David Prowse was the original, and then they went back and changed it. You mean?
Yes, yeah, because they changed his voice to James Earl Jones.
Have you ever
after.
heard the original
Yes.
David Prowse voicing?
It's hilarious.
Yeah,
Yes, not great.
definitely a good move to have replaced that.
Yes, James Earl Jones. One of a kind. Also, John Williams is out of retirement again. Do you see that?
That sounds fake. What does that mean?
Sorry, I don't.
He wrote a tune in his retirement home and wants to publish it now.
No, he said he's open to taking more gigs. So, Force for Thought theme song 2024.
Cannot underestimate how much money we need.
yeah,
I hope that didn't sound mean spirited. I do like John Williams, but he's 91. Like,
yeah.
How out of retirement can you really come? He's not going to score a movie at 91. You
He
think
said he's
he
open to
is?
taking more gigs. I don't know.
I'd be shocked.
I don't know why I didn't mention this earlier on.
Yeah, that's news.
We
That's
get
what
it
we're
right.
talking about.
All right, see you, Sammy.
Does anyone have any force for thought?
Oh shit!
Wait, Sammy, come back!
I missed
Sammy,
it.
come back!
Sammy, do not leave. I repeat, do not leave.
It's going to sound even McClunkier because I'm the one with the force for thought. It comes to us from The Rise of Skywalker. I was rewatching it, and at the end, you guys remember how it ends? You know, they destroy the lead ship, and then Poe says, their fleet is stuck here. They're toast. Come on. But, like, how stuck are they? Should we go back at some point and, like, actually destroy all the rest of these hundreds, thousands of Star Destroyers? Are they all just sitting on Exegol? Because they were built by the people living on Exegol. And so surely they could just keep building them and build another way to get out, build another lead Star Destroyer to get out, if that's the only one that could really do it.
Man,
And they were still able to shoot and
yeah.
destroy the ships.
They're
That's
setting
I never thought about that, just how small of a victory that part actually was.
They're definitely stuck there, like, for now.
All they did was make sure that they can't leave, but it's like, well, you still got to destroy them.
new trilogy, my friends. You know,
Going back to Exegol. I mean, I don't know.
right when they think that he pulled
You
me
guys
back.
recall, back in episode 9, it was actually sad that they were still stuck here.
I'm there. There it is. All right, see you, Sammy.